Welcome to the Encore Audio Archives YouTube channel. I'm Taper Dave, and this is my channel. I've uploaded hundreds of talks here that I've recorded at meetings in West LA, and I've also recorded conventions starting in 2013. I've got a bunch of those up. And Walt and Mary Murray, the original owners of Encore Audio Archives, started the company in the 80s, and Walt recorded Joe and Charlie's and a bunch of stuff down in Vista, California. My sobriety date is June 20th of 1994. I hope you find something you like, so please like and subscribe to my channel and comment down below. If you want to hear something that I don't have or that you don't see, I'll see that I get it. Anyways, take care and have a great day if you want to.
Okay, let's get started. Hello, hello. I think we'll start with the Serenity Prayer. I think that's always a good place to start and end. I'll say the first word. You, God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference. Thank you. At the bottom, I said this is a SoCal CoDA conference workshop, and the title is The Freedom That Comes from Forgiveness. My name is Joe, and I am codependent. At the first part, I wrote a partial definition of to forgive. It is a verb, past, gave, or past participle given. I stopped feeling angry or resentful towards someone for an offense, flaw, or mistake. I don't think I'll ever forgive David for the way he treated her. And I'll just tell you briefly that my experience with forgiveness was that when I first got in this program, I had very little of it. And I didn't have a very good clue of what it was. For me, forgiveness was like something that you mete out to people if they're remorseful enough. And the problem that I had with that is it wasn't about a relationship. It was almost like a bartering system. And I had no clue what forgiveness was. I only knew that if I had done something wrong, then somebody was supposed to forgive me. And so, or if they had done something wrong, then they had to somehow get forgiveness from me. And what I found in this program is that the meaning of forgiveness has shifted. There's been a major shift in forgiveness, what forgiveness is for me. I think in most everybody's program that's in here, they'll find that the way that the perception, for instance, of what a higher power may change over time. The perception of how to work the steps may change over time. I mean, we work the steps, they're pretty solid, but how we work them can be slightly different. It would be kind of difficult to work this program in a kind of a stale way, because I think we're growing as spiritual beings. And so growing as a spiritual being means that things are going to change, and especially what my mental attitude is about this program. I included at the top a couple of CoDA readings, and I thought that I would read one, and then we would have maybe a little discussion on these. And then, if you want to participate in a discussion, if you would come up here, and then what we'll do is we'll cycle through 4 or 5 people, and I have another microphone here that we can give you, and so that you can be on the recording if you wish to be.
Do you have the handouts?
They were on the back table. I had 65 of them, but it looks like we could be running out.
There's a couple left.
All right, score. Okay, so in the first CoDA reading, it says, "Do I have to forgive those who hurt me?" There's a saying within CoDA, "Blame keeps wounds open and forgiveness lets wounds heal. If we want to heal, we must learn to forgive. Not forgiving at all keeps us bound to blaming. It serves only to perpetuate our resentment and hurts. Quickly seeking and or forgiving early in our recovery often becomes a quick fix. We must first do steps 1 through 7 before approaching step 8. If not, personal and emotional growth do not take place. Forgiveness or not, our same codependent patterns eventually repeat themselves. And this is from the CoDA Blue Book on page 121. I thought it was pretty appropriate. Okay, so the question is, do I have to forgive those who hurt me? And so the question is, for me, is how do I go about forgiving those who have hurt me? And in other words, and in step 8, I get the list together of everyone I've harmed, essentially. So now, and that's usually me, and it's obviously others. So the question is, if I have to do that? So what's the discussion on? Do I have to forgive those who hurt me? What do I have? And how do I go about doing that? Any comments?
I'm Corey, recovering codependent.
Hi, Corey.
In working my program, I first need to admit very humbly and honestly that forgiveness is something I've really struggled with. And I haven't done all that impressively, and honestly, I haven't done all that willingly. And that's, I wrestle with it to this day, and that's probably the main reason I chose to come to this workshop. But a couple things I found that forgiveness requires willingness, and I believe that each individual has to come to a place where they're ready to be willing to forgive. Again, you can't do that quick fix thing, and I've also utilized a saying from another 12-step program, which is, resentment is the poison that I take hoping to kill someone else. So, I have to remind myself that resentment and animosity, it really does keep me feeling like a victim, even though, honestly, I admit it's been difficult for me to be willing to, let go and forgive. It's like I've still wanted certain people to hear when I say, "This is how you hurt me, asshole."
Thank you.
Renee, recovering codependent.
Hello, Renee.
Thank you, Joe, for this workshop. And for me, this has been a process, and that's what those steps that we have, they're in order for a reason, and definitely admitting that, I'm at fault or I've done something too. With the 4th step, what I really like for me is the resentments. When I've got to that, the realizations for me is just amazing to be able to look at what my part is, and part of that is whatever harm that someone else has done to me. I ask myself, have I done that to someone or something similar? And that usually what it does is it relieves a lot of that resentment. And of course, I bring that to my higher power sometimes, because sometimes it's very, very painful, especially if it comes from abuse or things that I felt like I was powerless over, that I have no control. So I'm really grateful. This is a really good topic. And also for forgiveness too is just making amends has been very freeing for me. Even what it's really cool, one of my sponsors has told me that even making amends for the littlest things, because for me I tend to rationalize things, or I'll be in the state of fear where I'm afraid of what they're going to think or how they're going to react. But what I've learned is that it's for me to free bondage of the self, and that's what kind of gets me closer to my higher power. So thanks.
Thank you. One of the things that I found, I looked at a lot of things online, like clever cliches for forgiveness, and a lot of them are not cliches. But the thing is that one of the things that you won't find, if you look on the internet, is you won't find a special magical formula for forgiving. There just isn't one. And so I decided basically that I wasn't going to include lots of clever cliches about forgiveness, because to tell somebody, a cliche. You can go, yes, I understand that, but I don't know what to do. And I have bad news for you. I can't tell you what to do either. Years ago, I had a spiritual teacher who used to say that some of these things in life that have to do with spirituality, they cannot be taught. They can only be caught. And this concept is so critical because the 12 steps are about this process where we have the aha moment where we go, I need to catch this, and I want to learn it so badly. And some people want to learn they want to learn the recovery process, and then that gives us like a small gem, but then we find out that we can follow the steps, but we can't just like do them like a machine. It's not a machine process. We all have to work the steps in a completely different way, but we have to work them. And the concept of forgiveness being in step 8 is really in step 9. In step 9 is where when I make amends, I do it in a loving and caring way, and I do it without a worry of what the consequences may be. And unless of course there's going to be harm. But the idea of doing it without that is it allows me to shed the baggage. And the shedding of the baggage for me is part about this process of forgiveness. It's about I've forgiven myself for what's happened in the past. Okay, and now I need to move forward. It's kind of like I get a new book to write in about what my life is going to be. And I don't have to tell myself the same stories. And that for me is forgiveness. I do not tell myself the same stories that I used to. I used to have horrible stories about what my self-worth was about. And as I worked through this process over and over and over again, those stories are still there. But I don't react to them the same way. It takes an awful lot to get me to react in the old shame, the shame type patterns that I used to have. I was quite shame-filled, and I was quite angry for being that shame-filled. So one of the things, I was duly indoctrinated as a small child into a very popular religion, or at least it's a very large one. And what I remember from that was that I remember the concept that people were, at their core, there was something wrong with them, and they had to do something to be fixed. They had to do something. We had to kind of watch each other and pray for each other, and we had to watch out to make sure that other people weren't doing wrong, and we had to take care of other people, and to the point where we lost ourselves in that process. And I would have to tell you that I didn't really buy into it, but the thing that I bought into was that there was something wrong with other people. I did buy into that. And so years ago, after I'd been in CoDA for a few years, I had a teacher tell me that at our core, we're all intrinsically good. And I thought, okay, I'll buy into that. I think I can get that. And then what I found out was that, and then it was explained to me that all we need to do is look at small children. If we look at small children and how they play, we know that there isn't, there's nothing bad about that. That's what this person was talking about, this intrinsic goodness. And that leads me up to the second part, that we learn that our higher power doesn't create bad people. Goodness dwells within us all, even those responsible for the broken promises and betrayals, abuses, hurts, and fears of our past. It's possible to love these persons, yet not condone their negative behaviors. We can even love and forgive ourselves. In our own way, we're all learning how to love and to be loved. And that's on page 20 in the CoDA Blue Book. And I thought that it was important to include something that talks about hope in this way. Because for me, when I came to this program, this wasn't possible. It wasn't possible for me to think this way. Somebody had to tell me what it was, and then I had to finally accept it for what it was. And that this last line, that in our own way we're all learning how to love and be loved, was for me, a long time ago, something that had to be earned, or you had to earn. Again, there was that barter system that was involved, and it was strictly on the human level, and that is that you do this for me, and I'll do that for you. And I was raised this way. I didn't think that there was anything wrong with it. But if you saw me when I crawled into my first CoDA meeting, you would know there was something wrong with the way that I was thinking, because I was pretty broken. Okay, so anybody want to talk about? I mean, does this sound like something that rings true for people here in this group? Would anybody like to talk about their any experience that they've had about this evolutionary process? For instance, for me, I used to think my parents were kind of like monsters. Okay, I don't think of them as being monsters anymore. I have a completely different sense about what they are and how they played out in my life, and the acceptance that I have for the things that they still do. And so, and I was wondering if anybody else had any ideas or wanted to talk about that.
One of the hardest things for me in this program is, all the people that I'm angry at in life, my parents, my ex-husband, my sisters, my brothers. And I'm realizing, what really sucks about life is everybody's human. So for me, forgiveness is I just get to know, everybody's just human, and they're just making human mistakes just like me. It sucks, nobody's perfect, but that's a big thing for me. Just people are human.
Anybody else?
I have a much easier time forgiving other people than I do myself. I had a great CoDA sponsor who pointed out that everybody's got blind spots. They just have blind spots. They have been very slow to recover. You find out over a period of time those people you can lend money to and even get it back. You find those people that you cannot ever lend money to. It's a gift. You find those people that you can trust to show up, and you find those people that aren't trustworthy. And it's a constant sorting out of people that we go through in life, who we want to become close to, who we want to be intimate with, and intimate in so many different in so many different ways. For my difficulty with forgiveness is forgiveness of myself. I still have very high standards that, for the most part, I make. That are easy standards because I can live with them. But there are times when I fall way short. I'd like to say it's out of character. If it's every 6 months, yeah, that's out of character. But when that occurs, it is extremely difficult for me to get past that in self-forgiveness. A long time ago, my first sponsor, when I got sober, said you don't have a clue how to forgive because you've never had a clue on how to give. I've had so much twine and nets attached to anything I gave that I also had to attach attachments to forgiveness as well. I'll forgive them if they do this. I'll forgive myself if I do that. So don't get me started on this one.
Thank you.
I am Gary. I agree that I have to forgive everyone. I don't deny that. But I don't know if I go so far as love them. I accept them as human and therefore imperfect and capable of making mistakes. I let go and let God and detach from them. And I even say with love, but I just mean, in spirit of my higher power. But I just accept them. I don't, I don't blame my parents, but they are responsible for what they've done. And I do love my parents, but there's other people who've harmed me, and I'm not going to love them. I just accept them. They're imperfect.
Thank you.
I'm 80. I find that a long time ago someone told me, or I read it, if you're not willing to forgive someone, if you're holding on to anger and resentment, what are you getting from it? And I had to look at that, and it came down to, I guess, a sense of power. At least I thought it felt like a sense of power. But hiding behind it was a sense of fear. And I realized that if I let go of the resentment and rage, it was scary because I'd held on to it for so very long, since my earliest childhood, that it's scary not to have it because I was so used to feeling and thinking that way. So it was a long process of working the program and believing and trusting my higher power before I was able to really let go of the resentment and fears behind my non-forgiveness. And sometimes it just comes down to my saying, okay, God, you forgive them, I can't, and accepting that.
Thank you.
I'm Kathy. Mine has to do with a former spouse that dissolved a 20-year marriage, and I left blaming, and it was all his fault. And at the time I was in Illinois. And it wasn't until maybe 10 years later that I got into CoDA. And it was in CoDA that I really learned about forgiveness and what it meant. And working the steps got me into that place of taking responsibility for my part in the relationship. And I was able to give up the blaming. And I was able to make amends for my part in the relationship. And today, it's gone. I'm grateful that I've been able to use this program to heal.
Thank you.
My name's Don. I'm codependent. For me personally, I'm on a number of different sides of this, where I continue. I've been in CoDA 4.5 years, and I continue to grasp and just to hold on with some resentment for my father. I'm the son of an alcoholic who terrorized the males in our family, and I repeated that behavior with my two sons. And I have since made amends to my sons. And my oldest son, who has been in recovery, preceded me into recovery. And I made amends, my CoDA behavior, I've made amends more than once. And finally, my oldest son said to me one day, Dad, I have forgiven you for that. And I thought that would actually make me feel good, but it actually did not make me feel good. I wasn't prepared for that. It made me feel uncomfortable. I wasn't ready to be forgiven. That's when I first figured out that somehow, obviously, that I hadn't done that. And so I've begun after 4.5 years to begin. I don't even know if forgiveness is the word for me, but to try to have some kind of appreciation or understanding from where my father came from, to allow me to begin to move in this direction. And when I see my behavior in my children, somehow, I wanted to blame my father for that he taught me that. And so this is a struggle for me, and which is one of the reasons why I'm here today. Thanks.
Thank you. One more.
I'm Sherry. When I first came to CoDA, I blamed everybody. But currently, I think I have forgiven everybody, my parents. But the one person that I still have a struggle forgiving is myself. And this was really in my early childhood, like 5 years old. You know, if I yelled at my mom, I just really have a hard time. That was just a for instance. But I just have a really hard time forgiving myself. And I don't know. Maybe I got to do some work on that. Thank you.
Thank you. No, I'm going to talk a little more, and then we're going to open it up for some more sharing. How's that? That's what this is about. Talk a little, I'll talk a little, and then we'll open it up a little more. That's why we're here today. In the next section is workshop objectives. You notice that I did not include as a workshop objective that you would be cured, healed, and or of any of these afflictions by the time that you leave. So I'm sorry. I was tempted to put that on there, but my girlfriend said that I might be thinking a little too much of myself. Anyway, on the first of these, it says freedom from being a victim, a perpetrator, or being in judgment. I heard somebody say this. They talked about this in almost these specific words in a sharing meeting, and I realized that fits in where we're talking about blame keeps the wounds open, and what I got from that was that when I'm blaming, I usually have no perception that I don't have any intuition or perception that I'm blaming. I'm just blaming. I'm in this state of mind that I'm blaming another person or I'm blaming myself. In other words, in my mind, I'm like the judge, and they're like a victim when I'm in that blaming mode. I'll show them, or this or that. So the problem that I have with that is that I also have no awareness. When I'm in that blaming mode, when I'm in that judgment, I usually don't have a perception of a higher power. So what I found is that the flip side of that blaming keeps the wounds open and forgiveness lets wounds heal, that the flip side is that as I become aware that I'm blaming or shaming myself or others, that I'm not in forgiveness of others, the awareness, that's the little window where forgiveness occurs for me. That's the window. And usually when I'm in blaming, I can't see the window. There's no window there. There's no opportunity to forgive because my mind is like this, it's closed, the shutters are closed. And when I go, oh, I'm blaming another person for just the circumstances of my life, then what happens is I realize that that's the forgiveness. That's the forgiveness. And it may be only in a moment because 20 seconds later I can go back to that dirty, rotten SOP. How could they possibly do this? Because my mind is like this looped tape recording, and it goes into the loop and it won't get out of the loop. And so, and whether I realize it or not, that as I'm blaming somebody else, I probably have. In other words, as I blame other people and places and things for not making my life as wonderful as I would like it to be, that as I'm doing that, that's the critic that exists within me that judges myself also. Because the standards that I'm holding the world to are the standards that I'm probably unable to uphold for myself. And so I'm going to make everything else around me as perfect as I can when in fact the real imperfection is in me, and I'm not willing to face that. And usually for me, it's about I'm not able to accept that. Okay, so comments, questions, and suggestions about being a victim, a perpetrator, or being in judgment. I found this to be quite powerful.
Sorry to interrupt your viewing. Taper Dave here. Just wanted to take a second to ask you to like and subscribe to my channel. Let me know if you like what you're listening. I've got some very good talks here, and this one's a great one. Just curious, do you think this is better than Zoom? Tell me what you think.
Again, please give us your name first. And
Hi, I'm Rob, codependent. And I had a realization recently that really helped me with forgiveness. Forgiveness has been something that I've been chasing for a long time and trying to understand it. And I've gone through the word studies and the relationship to give and how do you do this and so forth. And finally, a question occurred to me that if it doesn't lead to forgiveness, it is a prelude to forgiveness. And the question is, exactly what is it that I have to forgive? And if I have to forgive somebody, they've injured me in some way, or they have slighted me, or they've insulted me, they've done something to me. They've broken my rules, and I don't like it. And I realize that there's a question of justice involved here in each occasion of forgiveness, as I see it. And what's at the end of that question of justice is a resentment that I really don't like something that's happened to me here, and this person is involved in that situation. So I treat situations, issues of forgiveness, just like I treat a resentment. And part of the key is to really say, okay, this is why I'm ticked off at this person. This is exactly what happened, and I try to analyze that. I really try to see my part in it. And it often happens that when I'm working on an issue like this, that I begin to see that I'm holding something against somebody which is absurd. It's just ridiculous. They did nothing to me. This is something that just happened in my own mind. And there's nothing to forgive. I have to handle my anger that's at the bottom of this forgiveness. I have to get rid of the resentment. And if I can do that, then forgiveness follows on its heels naturally.
Thank you. Want to go on to the possibly the next section here. Did I see another hand? Okay. In the next one here, it talks about freedom to love from within, to choose to love when I may not feel it, and I heard a member in a CoDA meeting say this, and I have found. I don't know how to describe this, but if somebody had told me before I came into CoDA that I would be able to love people that I don't really like very much, I wouldn't have believed it was possible. But I actually find that it is possible. In other words, I may not like what they want. That was one of the things that's in the previous reading. I may not like what they say or do, but the thing is that on the most basic level, I do love other people. And finding that, for me, finding that place happens in step 11. It happens in prayer and in meditation. And for me, prayer and meditation it's like I need to breathe. If I hear myself saying, I need to breathe, that is the signal that I need to breathe. When I first got with the current girlfriend, I used to tell her a lot, breathe. Okay, and she used to get so pissed off at me. And then one day, she told me to breathe. I got so pissed off at her. I want you to know. It took me a while before I realized that when she was telling me to breathe, that she recognized that I was in that state that I needed to breathe. And that's a good thing in recovery, to have somebody who can tell me when to breathe. And they say it and they mean it from a loving place. They don't mean it like breathe, they're not trying to fix me. They recognize something in me that I need to do. And that's part of this freedom to love, and it's from within. It's to choose to love when I may not feel it. And to love others, to love myself when I may not feel it. And I have not found that that's easy to do. I find that the patterns and the characteristics of codependency are pretty well ingrained within me. And I think that this, for me, is pretty much going to be a lifelong process of working at this. Okay, any questions, comments about this last part or what we've come up with so far? I'm going to go to the back row. No, back.
Hi, my name is Elle, and I'm a codependent. And my challenge is that I have a 28-year-old stepson, and I've been in his life since he was 10, and have never been able to get along with him. And he seems to stir up trouble wherever he can and create havoc wherever he goes. And in my heart, I want to have a relationship with him, and I want to be forgiving, because everybody's just human. I know that. But it's very hard when it's still an ongoing issue to come from a place of love. So I'm really glad to be here today, because I'm hoping to be able to work through this. I know that it will really help me. So thank you to all of you.
Thank you.
Hi, Michelle. I'm codependent. I had a late thought about the last one, freedom from being a victim. For me, when I first got to recovery, I felt like the biggest victim. And one of the things that I kept getting stuck on over and over again was, why do I keep attracting this same kind of person? All of my romantic relationships, friendship relationships, coworker, it was always the same kind of person, the using and abusing and taking me for granted and the whole story. And things really started to shift for me when I learned to ask not, why do I keep attracting this kind of person, but why do I keep choosing this kind of person? And for me, moving out of that place of being a victim empowered me to take a little bit of responsibility for the choices that I was making. I had a choice to be in all of those relationships as an adult. All those people in my life were of my own choosing. Therefore, I could unchoose it anytime I wanted to. Now, of course, I had to work on my recovery to get to that place, to act on it. But for me, being in a place of being a victim, there's nothing I can do with that. I can't work on that. If I can move out of that space and identify what's my part in this, then I have something that I can work on that empowers me. Then, I can head in the direction that I want to head into. That was a hard concept for me at first. I was abused as a child, so then, having to separate between being a child and adult, and starting to view myself instead of a victim of child abuse, a survivor of child abuse. So I was able to use that in order to work on healing those wounds. And today in my adult life, I like one of the phrases that I've heard in recovery, which is, there are no adult victims, only volunteers. And that one is just kind of like a very cut to the heart of it. When I'm feeling victimized or wronged, or in some way there's like an injustice that I want to resent or fight back or something, that's just a really quick reminder of me to pull back and remember, you know what, I volunteered for this. So do I need to set a boundary? Do I need to apply a tool? Like, what do I have to do differently if I want a different outcome, instead of just seeing myself as a helpless, hopeless victim? Thanks.
Thank you. I had a teacher one time who told me that all relationships are blood and guts, and I thought he was kind of full of hooey. But I found that even people in the most spiritual of relationships have conflict, and the conflict sometimes is about a control more than anything else. And something that was triggered in me is that another person talked about that, isn't it funny that sometimes we go from a relationship to another relationship to another relationship, and each one of them starts out being different, but they all end up being the same. And this guy said the reason for that is because we train people how to treat us. And so that means that we're not, in a way, blameless for the things. And if we have done that and the other person ended up being different in the relationship as a result of our training them to treat us a particular way, then that's partly due to our character defect. We do have an effect on other people. I mean, this is the reason why many of us struggle. I mean, I struggle because I have character defects, and it's because I have sometimes the illusion that I can make you do something, when that's just simply not the case. By the way, that's how I got into CoDA. I was in another class at where I worked, and in that class I debated somebody, and he says, I had the illusion that I could make people do things. And when they shattered that illusion, that was the beginning of a journey for me where I finally figured out that I wasn't able to make other people do things, and it was one of the major sources of my frustration, but I didn't know how to fix that. And that's the reason I came into these rooms. And it's been quite an adventure. I've learned so much about loving other people, it's unbelievable. I have had the joy of being in multiple step studies, and some of the people that have been in step studies with me are in this room, and I love them very much. And I won't say that I love them more than other people, but they're my sisters and brothers, and they have shown me a light. You know, they've shown me this path to freedom, if you will. The back of my shirt here says A New Freedom. It's from the 2005 SoCal CoDA conference, and it's a new freedom. And I thought it was interesting, so that's why I brought my orange T-shirt along from that conference. And okay, so the next thing is objective is forgiveness for harming ourselves and others. Create lists from different perspectives, how I hurt myself, others, or the resentments we may hold. That's in page 107 of the Green Book. It's slightly modified, but that's the essence of it. I only had really 2 pages to write on, but that was the essence of it. How I hurt myself, others, or the resentments we may hold. Because what I have found is that this is actually one of the questions on the second page. In other words, is there a relationship between my blaming and an inability for me to forgive? And that's the 11th question on the next page. Is there a relationship? And that's a hard one. This is part of doing my 4th step. This is my 4th step. This is where I figure out figure out the meat and the potatoes of my dysfunction. And where I function and where I dysfunction. I found the 4th step the first time was I was so hurt, and the group that I was in was so loving that they were able to remind me time and time again where they knew that I was kind and caring and good on the inside. And it was an amazing experience. And I needed that. And that's what sponsorship does, is have somebody to do that. And because I don't think it's possible to go through the 4th step and the 5th step without another human being. It's 4th step, I think it's imperative that we have another human being or human beings to do that. Because if we don't have that, then we're lost, because I have too many illusions to come up with the truth. I have far too many illusions to come up with my own truth. The only truth that I was able to come up with when I first joined this program was, A, my mind was responsible for one thing and one thing only. It was responsible for getting me to meetings, because meetings are what gave me relief when I first got here. They gave me relief. So my mind was responsible for getting me there. When I didn't want to go there, I still had to go there. My mind set the schedule, made no other commitments during that time frame, and I came to meetings. And so that's what my mind was responsible for. Not to overly quote anybody from outside program, but Albert Einstein said that the same thinking that gets you into a problem cannot get you out of it. essentially. I'm paraphrasing. And when I recognized that my mind was broken and that my mind being broken was incapable of saving and fixing itself, I had to go to some other source. And that's how I ended up in this program. And for me, that was the first step on how, that was my first CoDA meeting. My first few CoDA meetings were so freeing. It was unbelievable. Okay. So next is, see, this third part leads into the questions that are on the next page. And I was wondering if anybody if you'd like to take a moment or read over some of the questions, if you'd like to comment on them. That's what the next part of this workshop is about, is commenting on these questions. Did we run out of handouts? Okay. Can you read the question, please? You want me to read them one by one? I'll be glad.
Okay, we don't have handouts.
Okay. Well, this might, okay, I thought I had printed out enough. I thought I was being, I thought my big head was being too big by saying, oh, I'll print out 65 of them things, and maybe 20 people will show up, and I'll have these things hanging around in my desk for 6 months. No, that's not how it goes this time. Okay, so the first question is forgiveness really a choice? Do I really get to choose whether or not to forgive? And any questions or comments on that? I think that's a powerful question. Is it really a choice?
George, codependent. I forgive people because I love myself, and I'm not going to give them free rent.
Right. Right. Right.
Catch.
So is forgiveness really a choice?
Again, I'm Corey, codependent. I do believe forgiveness is a choice because one of the things this program teaches us is that we have to accept what we cannot control. And that applies to me, and I believe that applies to each one of us, which means that no one can make me forgive anyone. I have to choose to do so. I have to be willing to. And if I choose not to, then I have to find a way to deal with whatever problems that I have to contend with from not forgiving. And I have to determine if there's more benefits to forgive or to not forgive. But I believe that it is a choice.
Thank you. I'll get to you. I just want here in the back front answer them in order.
Hi, I'm Bernie. I think forgiveness is a choice, but I also think that, there's oftentimes when the injury can be so deep or so profound that I have to turn to my higher power. And my higher power is God. And I say, God, help me to be able to forgive. Give me the heart I need in order to forgive. So I think it is a choice, but I also think that sometimes we can't do it in our own strength.
Okay, I saw a couple of hands up in the front over here.
I'm Todd, I'm codependent. For me, it's been I have to be very careful because in my life I've been very easy to say I'm forgiving people in my mind as a dismissal of the issue at hand. And I skip right over feeling the anger or feeling the resentment or feeling the hurt and just kind of in my mind think I'm being this great person forgiving them and moving on, when in fact I didn't really forgive them. It's very slippery kind of thing for me. I didn't set boundaries well, or I don't know if I really struggled with that. And then sometimes before I go back and I think I've forgiven people, and then I look down and I find I still have the anger, I still have the resentment, I still have the hurt, and I realize I didn't really forgive them. And it's very difficult. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Kate.
Okay.
I hadn't really thought about this until we read this question just now, but I have a very clear and powerful reaction to it, and that was that not forgiving is very clearly a choice for me. when I choose to hold on to a resentment, when I choose to blame, when I choose to not forgive, that's a very clear and straightforward choice that I can make very powerfully. When I choose to forgive, that's not always a choice I'm in control of. I choose to be willing to forgive. I choose to create the space to forgive. I choose to do the work to look at my part and clean up my side of the street. But I can't necessarily choose to forgive the way I can choose to not forgive. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Marilyn. I downright chose not to forgive my mother for years, and it was a process. You know, it was a gradual thing, and I had to get into compassion. I had to get into acceptance, which didn't mean approval. And it was one of the biggest gifts I've gotten from this program was I did finally come to terms with the fact that she could not have done what she did any other way. She could not have. And just coming into that realm of acceptance, I absolutely forgave her before she passed away. It was huge.
I wanted to make a comment. One of the things that I found interesting is I heard somebody talking about choices and how people make choices. For instance, how many of us have looked at somebody who was doing drugs or alcohol and decreed they're choosing to do that, or they're choosing these terrible relationships? And what I found out is that the choices that I was making with my dysfunctional mind were choices that were comfortable for my mind. I know what the outcome was going to be. So that's the reason why I talk about the defective mind. My mind was broken, it was defective, and it needed to be fixed. And how am I going to go about doing this? Because I was making choices. They weren't really choices. I call it something goes wrong, and this is the chute that I go down. This is the addiction that I act out. I call it the chute. This is the chute that I go down. I know what the result is going to be, but once I'm in the chute, there's no getting out of it. There's no stopping it. In other words, if I pick up a drink, I've picked up the drink. There's no getting out of it. Once it's down the hatch, it's down the hatch. Okay? Once I'm in another bad relationship with somebody, and there's screaming and there's abuse and all that, I've gone down the chute again. And that was the problem that I had, was that those were supposedly choices that come from unconscious type behavior. That's the dysfunctional, the codependent behavior. I call it an unconscious behavior, an unconscious choice. And so forgiveness is a choice. If I say, I forgive you, but it's really in a way that has a hook in it that's pulling you back because you need to be more remorseful, then that isn't really forgiveness. And so that the choice to forgive comes from, I heard it, somebody said, I get it from my higher power when I pray for it. And that's step 11. I have prayer and meditation, and I find out what my place in it is, if there's a dysfunction there, and what position. I want to read one or two more questions, and by the way, if you want to comment, you can comment on any question that you want that's here, okay, or something that's relevant to this workshop. That's why we're here. Next is, I was just talking about, is my forgiveness based in rightness or righteousness? Okay, me feeling better than it. Or does the seeking or giving forgiveness, does it work? These are basically the same thing. So if anybody has questions and comments on these two questions and or the one of the first two,
Hi, my name's Arlene. I'm a codependent, and I only want to share one thing that has helped me, and I'm going through a separation, divorce. It's called the Ho'oponopono, and it's 4 simple little sentences, and it transforms any horrible non-forgiveness that I have. And it's, I'm sorry, please forgive me, I love you, and thank you. And it is, I don't know how or why it works, but it works. And I can say it over and over as a mantra, and wow, it's just like that's, I believe God working through me. So, thank you.
Thank you.
I am Gary, grateful, recovering codependent. I actually have a comment on question number 5. 2 summers ago, I was working on forgiveness, and I was reading a book from another recovery program, and the question was, what blocks you from forgiveness? And it was something that actually blew me away. It was so incredible, the discovery. It said, what can block you from forgiveness is the loss of control of gaining revenge. And at the time, it was really powerful for me because I was looking for revenge against my wife or something. And I was looking for that chance for her to do one more thing so I could get that gotcha, that knife, back in her side. All she had to do was say one more thing and I could get back at her. And that was a major discovery, and in that moment I knew that I had to forgive.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Daniela. I've been dealing with a lot of anger lately, a lot of anger, and having a really difficult time forgiving. And someone told me a while ago that when you're angry and hold resentment towards someone, that it's like you drinking poison and hoping it affects the person that you're upset at. I'm going, yeah. But I think I've had a very hard time letting go of this because I think that it's validating. When you're angry, when you have resentment, it's because someone wronged you, someone did something, and it's a justification for what's going on. And then I had a brilliant friend tell me, well, we were talking about our inner children, and saying, well, you have a hurt inner child, and what, the person that wronged you, they also have a hurt inner child. And I went, shit, why'd you have to tell me that? Now I feel bad about being so angry and so ignorant, so empathetic. You're right, but still, something I'm working towards. So.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Charles, codependent. And what gets in the way of forgiveness? I'll just say this. I had this experience myself. Hurt, pain, anger, hatred. How about denial? In my case, I had 2 very dysfunctional parents. And in my childhood, I just had to say, Dad was the bad one because he was overt. Oh, I have nothing against my mother. She's fine. It took me 10 years in this program to realize I had a big denial and to get angry. I had never felt any anger toward her. And you know why I had to get angry? Pissed with her? Because you can't forgive until you've felt the anger. Thank you.
Thanks, Drew.
My name's Sam. I'm codependent.
Yes, Sam.
I want to participate in my recovery. I just picked number 5 also. What is it that gets in the way of forgiveness, pain, anger, hatred, all of the above? I added pride and ego and fear of the unknown. If I let you off the hook, for me, it shows a sign of weakness, which is really delusional thinking. I mean, it's actually the opposite. By letting somebody else off the hook is a way of strength. And I was taught that ego, if I let go of my ego, pride, ego's the acronym for that is edging God out. So this is just my personal experience. If I don't let somebody off the hook, I'm really the one that's on the hook. So that's my personal experience, and I can't live with resentment. Thank you.
Okay, I want to force through a couple more questions here. Obviously, number 5 got leaked out. What is it that gets in the way of forgiveness? Pain, anger, hatred. One of the things that I found out in my program is that if I acted out what I call badly against somebody else, and I created pain in another person, what I came to learn was that that amount of pain had to exist within me. And that wasn't easy to face. So when I looked at some of the cruel things that I had done to other people, it was kind of hard to realize that I was holding all that, because there was a serious amount of righteousness that went with that. And so when I came into this program, those are the 3 things, I would say those are the 3 things that really I was imbued with: pain, anger, and hatred. And the next question is, are there people which you may never be able to forgive? That's a hard one, because like for me, I believe that the person that I would never be able to forgive would be my mother. And then I went through this process where, I confronted her for some of her bad behaviors when I was a child, and some of the things that she did to my siblings, and she denied it all. And I found out that she had this tremendous wall around all these things that she had done, and it made me really sad, because when my grandmother died, she was a raging lunatic. The only thing was that she was dying, because she should have been in a mental hospital somewhere, and she should have been in a straitjacket. And when my mother denied some of the behavior, she said, the next thing you know, you're going to tell me that I did X, Y, and Z. And I said, oh, you did that to us all the time. She says, I never did that. My mother did that to me. She didn't know that she had done this to us. So this is the depth of the pain. I never recognized this in her. In that moment, though, what I recognized was that that's what made my CoDA program like 10 times stronger, because she would go to any lengths to deny the anger and the cruelty that she had within her, and I couldn't do that. And that's in that moment when I learned that I would go to any lengths to not be like my grandmother and be like my mother. And at first I had to do it because I was angry at them for the way that they were. And then I came to find out that I just accepted them for what they were. So, and one day I heard myself saying something, and I said, oh, I sound like my mother. And I was so pissed off at myself. I was so angry. And it was like the anger that would last, before would last on me for weeks. But then at that time, it only lasted me for like minutes. Well, this one lasted for a couple of hours. And then later on, I found out that just the awareness of that seemed to be enough. Because where I went from that was that the next time I said to myself, oh, that sounded exactly like my mother, I was kind of neutral about it. I wasn't happy or unhappy about it. And then over a period of time, I'll be doing something and I'll go, oh, that's just like my mother. And I laugh. And it's it's this funny laugh where it's like, okay, I acknowledge that this is part of my forgiveness, that this is part of my journey. That part of my journey was to live with my mother and to absorb some of these traits and behaviors, and to accept them within myself, and to actually forgive them within myself. Because when I'm laughing about a behavior, when I'm able to do that, and I'm doing it at work, I can actually go to the other person and go, I'm backing off on whatever it is that I just said. I'm going to, if I need to change my mind, I'll change my mind. If I need to make an amends, I can do it instantly. It's like, hey, maybe I was off base. What do I need to do to make it right? And let the other person choose. And if it's within bounds, I'll do it. It's not easy to do. I certainly could not do that when I first got into this program. That wasn't even a possibility. Okay, so are there people which you may never be able to forgive? I thought I would never be able to forgive my mother. I've gone beyond forgiving my mother. I love my mother very much. I would not be here. I would not be the person that I am today without my mother. Okay? And it's not just her. It's not her and at the exclusion of other people. I'm here as a result of a lot of other people and a lot of other things that I've learned. But she was a big part of my life. And how do we forgive the emptiness of our childhood and relationships throughout our lives? How do we go about doing that? Because that's one of the things that's talked about in the CoDA reading, that we just lost my train of thought. Okay, let's go back to question 6, and let's go back to question 6 if there's any thing or anything else based on anything else. I'm a little verklempt. I don't know what that's about.
My name is Michelle, and I'm codependent. Actually, mine has more to do with like an aha moment. And the fact that as I was listening to people, I thought about these things. One of them is asking others to forgive me because I know I've done wrong, but the hard part is admitting I did something wrong. Since I'm the perfectionist type, I have this self-image of what I think other people should think of me. So if I do not fulfill those, then I deny. Another part is taking the responsibility that I did wrong and taking the action to make amends to them. Whether it be, just verbally or doing something, another behavior that is not counterproductive. But the hardest part for me is because I'm insecure. I have I'm losing my train now. I'm emotionally unstable. I do not like being hurt, so asking others to forgive me is placing the power in their hands and letting them, choose to accept it, and I fear that I will be hurt in the process. So, on the flip side, it is forgiving others. The child in me wants to hold on to that grudge or anger because it's like, you did this, you did that. I don't want to talk to you. I don't want to see you, period. So I have trouble growing up. It's like I just want to stay that child. But I know eventually all of us have to grow up, learn with our experiences. And the other part is just carrying that experience from relationship to relationship. It's hard for me to change my ways. And thank you.
Thanks, Michelle. Thank you. Anybody else?
Hi, Michelle, I'm codependent. Number 11, is there a relationship between blaming and an inability to forgive? For me, I think there definitely is. I think that when I don't know how to forgive, blaming is the tool that I use. I think that all of my character defects are tools. They may have served me in childhood, I outgrow them, and they don't really work anymore. But until I learn a new tool to replace it with, that's all I have. Considering it from both perspectives, for me growing up, I was never forgiven. No one ever showed me how to forgive. No one ever modeled that. No one ever forgave me, so I never learned it. Growing up, whenever I made a mistake or failed to be perfect, I tried very hard to apologize, and that apology was never accepted. There was never any forgiveness. I tried to make things right, and my mother's favorite line was always to tell me, don't even try to make it right. What you've done is so horrible. Nothing you can do will ever make up for it. Just, go to your room. I don't even want to look at you. Just think of what you did and feel shame. Don't be in a solution. And so that message over and over again, I just did not learn how to forgive. And so then as an adult, I did not know how to forgive other people. So I continued to blame until I learned that tool. And for me, that tool is, it's quite a spectrum. So I've learned how to forgive many people. However, that doesn't mean that I can do it all the time with everyone. One of the people who, at this point in my life, I don't know that I'll ever be able to forgive is my father. I sort of look at it as like training wheels. Like I've learned how to forgive, with the little training wheels, and that doesn't mean that, that I can, do the big marathon, bike race. So maybe that bigger level of forgiveness will come later, and I certainly pray for the willingness for that. And so in the meantime, with certain people, my father included, I do still use blame because I don't have that other tool yet. Thanks.
My name is Todd. I'm codependent. I would just wanted to answer this question about are there people which you may never be able to forgive, and I just realized that my stepfather, I grew up with a stepfather that was very emotionally and physically and sexually abusive, and my brother and sister, I've fared much better than them, and both of them are in drugs and alcohol to the point of near death, and they're a year and 2 years younger than me, and I blame him a lot for his abuse of them and how they turned out. And it's something I don't know if I'll ever be able to forgive him for that.
By the way, that question is not an opinion like you have to do this. Okay, it's not a requirement in this life. I think there are some things that happen to people that they're unable to forgive, and I think that's related to the level of pain that we hold. And I think this process of the 12 steps is about how we dissolve that pain and how we wash it away, if you will. And some people will never get there, and some people are so cruel that one teacher described people who are evil as being just the most unconscious of people. In other words, the most dysfunctional of people. And sometimes I think that's all the farther that we can go with that. My father did some pretty evil things, and the thing is that I don't know what my level of forgiveness is for him. I finally decided that I don't need to forgive him or not forgive him. I need to live my own life. I need to stop worrying about what are the things that he did to other people to harm them.
Hi, I'm Sina, codependent. When it comes to forgiveness for me, sometimes in our pain, obviously we can't see clearly. We're focused on what we're feeling and have no idea what the other person's feeling. And so sometimes in people's desperation to keep themselves safe, they do things that are hurtful because they don't know any other way. Sometimes they completely stop talking to you or abandon you. Anything because they just don't know how to do it any other way. And compassion is something that I've learned in this program. Just like I have a hurt child, they might have a hurt child. Just like I'm not perfect, they're not perfect. And the only way to truly receive love is to forgive. Because if I don't forgive, I carry all those things with me. And if I believe that I deserve 100% of love and truth, the only way to receive that is if I let go of those things that have hurt me. Because I do want love, but I can't have it if I hold on to those things. I once read this little story about this guy would go pray every morning, and there was a spider bobbing in the water. And he picked up the spider and he put it on the bank, and it bit him. It was a poisonous spider, but because he just prayed for love and for compassion, it had no effect on him. And by the third time he picked up the spider said, "Hey, why do you keep picking me up? You know I'm gonna bite you because it's what I do." And he says, "Yes, because this is what I do. I choose to love. So no matter how many times you bite, you do not affect the way that I choose to love."
George, codependent again.
All right, folks, last time. I do a lot of work with people who are new in recovery. Yes, another program, but it's the same stuff. It's all from the root of codependency. They're basically incapable of saying what their feelings are. They're basically incapable of saying what happened and how it makes them feel. And to get to a point of nonviolent communication, to get to that skill, setting each one of them down, you find out that they really don't know what they're angry about. But anger gives a very false sense of power. And that's the saddest of all, when it's reduced down to this power. We hang under resentments because we feel we're getting even. And it's been a great, you did a good job, Joe. So we're gonna give you the clap.
Wow. Here's something that I found out. I'd been in a program probably several years when where I worked, there was a guy who was he's twice as angry as I ever was. And one day, my coworker tells me, he says, hey, he says, the way to control Scott is just to piss him off. Because once you piss him off, you basically disable him. He can't do anything. And I thought, I just had this amazing epiphany. It was just like, oh my goodness. This is why I was so angry when I came into program, is because when I was angry, people were able to push my buttons, get me angry, and then what they were able to do was they were able to minimize, alter, or deny the things that I did or said or what I felt. They were able to do that because I was angry. And so what happened is that there was actually an incident with a fellow CoDA member where we went out. It was the first time I ever went out to fellowship after a meeting. And the person said to me, you know, Joe, I don't really mean to take your inventory, but why are you so angry? I had been angry many times in my life. I had never seen red before. I saw red that day. For like about 40 seconds, I saw nothing but red. I could not see, could not believe that this person had said it. And so I called other people that had been my step study buddies at that time, or before, a few months before. I called them, and the first person said, Joe, whatever made you think that going to fellowship after a meeting was a safe place? That was number one. So, and what I came to find out, okay, so this person didn't come to a CoDA meeting for about another 5 or 6 weeks. So I thought, maybe it had something to do with me. Then I found out when I came back to the meeting, they'd been on an out-of-town assignment and some other stuff. So it wasn't about me. But by the time that person came back to the meeting, I was absolutely okay with what they said. Because in terms of where my anger was, like probably 60 or 70% of it just went away because of that one incident. So sometimes the things that trigger us are the things that basically, they don't just trigger an upset or trigger the dysfunction, they trigger the growth that's necessary to set that dysfunction aside. And I can honestly tell you that my biggest thing when I came into this program was about my anger and the resentments and all that. And one day, somebody came up to me and they said, Joe, you've changed. And I said, what do you mean? I didn't get it. They go, you've changed. You hold your face a different way. And I said, what are you talking about? They go, you're not angry anymore. And I thought, you know what? It's true. I didn't have this thing spinning in my mind about all the people and the places and the things that had so radically, changed my life and hurt me, et cetera, et cetera. I was giving a workshop. I gave a workshop, I don't know, a year ago, a few months ago, and Well, interestingly enough, there were two women in the meeting who are my same height or shorter than me, and so I guess that gave the courage for some of the people in the workshop to talk to me about being short. And they asked me about, was being short, did it affect me growing up? And I said, oh, yes, it did. I said, everything passed through this one little kernel of truth that if you were being nice to me, it's because you were taking pity on me because I was short. If you were being nasty to me, or it was because I was short. Everything was related to the fact that I'm short. I am different. And the one thing this program taught me was that I am not terminally unique. I found out I'm not. And so when they said, so what happened, what happened that you stopped being so upset about being short? I said, I don't know when that happened. And they said, well, how did it happen? And I said, I don't know how that happened. And then I got this insight. And the insight was, I forgave God for making me short. So I didn't even realize I was going to say that. But that's really what, in that moment then, and I didn't realize that I was going to tell that story now, but that was profound, because what it really came down to is that I had this sense of acceptance about myself that I never, ever had before, and that I was okay, even in this form, to other people. I never understood the influence that I had with other people. And I've told story after story about how I've learned things about myself. And the thing is that I rarely learn things in the moment. I don't know if it's because I'm a slow learner. I think I learn these things after the fact, because what happens is I have a busy mind that likes to take credit for all the things that happen. So if I had a mind that said, hey, we figured out why we're angry at the world and now we don't have to be anymore, that it will figure out a way to sneak the dysfunction back in, because my mind is the source of my dysfunction. Okay, it is still to this day. And when I don't have an awareness that my mind is the source of my dysfunction, then then I will forget that the disease of codependency is cunning, baffling, powerful, and it is patient. Extremely patient. You guys are laughing. I know that we know. I love the laughter in these rooms when we can laugh about our conditions. I remember it was one of my first CoDA meetings, and I was so attentive, and I was listening to people talk about their problems and their pain and their suffering. And I think in the second meeting, I said something like, I've listened to people share in like 2 meetings now, and I realized that if I could sit down with each of you for 5 to 10 minutes, I could help you solve some of these problems. And this laughter erupted in the room, and I didn't get it for about 2. Remember, I'm a slow learner. And then I had an aha moment the aha moment that I had then was that I can so clearly see other people's dysfunctions when they talk about them, even when they're not being that vulnerable or open. I can see other people's dysfunctions. What I've learned in this program is that for some reason, you all are able to see what mine are too. And my dis-ease is that I'm not able to communicate that, because the chances are that if you say, Joe, you know what your problem is? If I could talk to you for 5 or 10 minutes, I could help you with it, I would probably get angry with you. Even probably still to this day. It takes, and this is a part where relationships are important, because relationships are about developing trust in other people and trusting that the other people love me and that what they're telling me is coming from a place that's loving and kind. And my mind doesn't understand about loving and kind. My mind has to be kind of set off to the side, and I have to go, no, those rumblings aren't really true. Those rumblings aren't really true. This is a person who loves me, and when they're saying something, what they really mean is that they love me, and they do wish that I would get better. And somebody has to tell me these things when, in an intimate relationship, that other person is there to show me something about myself. They're not just there to show me themselves. They're there to show me something deep about myself. And this is where I may be off track here, but this is the important part of this program. This is the important thing about the relationships that we have with other people, regardless of what they are, whether they're work relationships, intimate relationships, friendships, their family, whatever these relationships are and however we choose to categorize them, other people are there to show us something about ourselves. And even the cruel people, and that's not easy for me to get, because my mind immediately jumps in and goes, they can't do that. I will not let them get by with that. I'll never forgive them for doing that. That type of thinking is what arises inside of me. I don't know how we're fixed for time here. Okay, I can accept that. The last question I wrote down says, if someone has done you wrong and you cannot forgive them, what are the chances that they have forgotten or dismissed it and they're just going on with their life? And who gets to carry the burden, the pain, and the suffering? I want to tell you something. It goes the opposite way, too. Years ago, I was leaving to go back into the Army, and my mother told me, as I was leaving, it was the last words that she said before somebody drove me off to the airport. She says, Joe, you're a kind and loving man. And I hope that you will find somebody that will understand and know that and see that in you. My mother had never talked to me this way before. It was such a profound moment in my life that, it's like burned in my mind. I talked to her about it years from then. She goes, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't remember saying anything like that. She doesn't. She doesn't. And, the reason that she doesn't is because, and the reason that I do is because this is the nature of these relationships that we have with other people. She said something that was so profound. She literally, in that moment, what she did was she gave me a blessing that said, you're forgiven. You're a good person. Forget all the other stuff that I told you about what you're supposed to do and how you're supposed to do it. You're a good man. And somebody, and I hope you'll meet somebody that will recognize that. It was powerful. And that's a form of forgiveness. Anyway, what I would like to do is circle up. I think we should have a nice big circle, and we should say the Serenity Prayer. And thank you all for attending today. Thank you.
I think we got a great talk going on here. Thanks for watching the channel. Taper Dave here. Just curious, do you think this is better than Zoom? Okay, this is how I prepare my drone for launching. I like to do it inside the cab of my truck so I'm not standing outside in the weather. To install the joysticks for control, up and down, right and left, power it on. I have an Android phone that I use to connect it to the drone with. And it's actually controlled through the iPhone, through an app. Oops, wrong way. It's actually controlled through the iPhone, or through this Android phone, through the app. It's actually controlled through the Android phone, through an app, and you connect it through this short connection right here.
Remote control connected.
Remote control's connected. So I pull out the drone. I have to extend the legs. Long legs extended first, then the short legs. Remove the gimbal protector. Set that aside, then power it on one short burst and one long burst. I lay it down. So I have to go to calibrate. So the drone's not connected yet. Shows you here as this drone gets disconnected, even though the remote's powered on. So the drone has to establish it's connected. So I go into the app to calibration mode. First I'll calibrate the remote controller. Start calibration. Out, in, oop, out, in, up, down, and then this little wheel is to control the gimbal. So it's calibrated. Go to gimbal calibration, start calibration, and then it calibrates the gimbal. I don't know if that shows up. The gimbal's moving all over the place. Changes, you can see it on the video. And I'm calibrated to take off. It's acquired 7 satellites at the moment. There are 26 satellites up in the sky, which it has to acquire before you can take off. So it's connected. It's got enough satellites. This is white. I can go to press this little arrow button, swipe right to take off, and it would start the motors if I slid this to the right. But I'll wait till I get outside. Don't want to do it inside.